I'm Al Hassinger, Activities VP for GOGOP, the Greater Oakland Republicans. Welcome to On the Right Side. Today we have with us Jim Tedder. He's the Michigan State Representative from the 43rd District. We want to welcome him. Thank you for joining us, Jim.
Thanks for having me on, Al.
Our show addresses issues that are topical to our area. Obviously, we look at things from the right side, but we have an open discussion here and always appreciate people coming in to talk to us. Jim, thanks again. Just want to get a little bit of a background on you. 43rd District, where is the 43rd District?
The 43rd District encompasses Clarkston, Independence Township, Lake Angeles, and Waterford Township.
And I mean, currently we're not sitting in the 43rd District, so it's a little bit west of where we're sitting right now in Lake Orion.
Correct, just literally to the west. I live in the northeast part of Independence Township, so about a mile west of Baldwin.
Okay,
Clarkston.
Terrific. Just a little bit about your background. Currently in your second term right now, what brought you, well, let's say, give us your educational background, private sector. You were also an educator for a while prior to politics. Give us a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I graduated from Clarkston High School in 1987, went on to Central Michigan University and pursued an applied arts degree, double majoring in political science.
Terrific.
And broadcast and cinematic arts. So
you're a natural for this.
It's been several years, but this was very much a part of my life as a kid, young adult. Mm-hmm. And graduated from there. I moved out to Washington, D.C. and worked in at the federal level, but within the realm of state and local government affairs. I tracked business and labor policy as it affected the 50 states. I worked for two different trade groups, one called Associated Builders and Contractors.
Mm-hmm. ABC.
Yep, and also the National Association of Home Builders. So in many ways, I was the conduit between our national headquarters and the state affiliates.
Working for those groups, it sounds like a natural progression towards public service. You're involved with both the private sector and also the public sector, acting as a liaison. What sort of pushed you from the educational, private sector to that, and then into local politics?
Yeah, great question. Well, my discovery or my and fascination with politics really began in 1990.
Wow.
I was a junior in college, and a friend approached me to perhaps consider being an intern for the Isabella County Republican's office. And I was a 3-credit elective, and frankly, looking back on my family, I don't have any political pedigree to lean on. Mm-hmm. No family members that have really pursued public office.
Right.
And frankly, my parents were what you might classify as that Ross Perot voter that had, in many ways, a not so subtle contempt for government.
Right.
But ever since then, it became an interest and a passion of mine. And so, though I did eventually delve into education and have long held a small business. Mm-hmm. The common thread in my life has been politics, much like some people might be heavily engaged in a particular sport or craft.
Right.
Politics has been my sport for a long time.
Well, I think you're good at it. That's terrific.
Thank you.
And stick with it. And I think, having that background and bringing the educational background and also understanding the private sector makes you the ideal candidate. You're not a career politician. You've seen different walks of life and decided to pursue something in the public sector, because you saw there was a little bit more to it than just whatever you were doing previously. Was there one big thing, or was it a lot of little things that made you decide to run for the 43rd District?
I think I lean back to 2008, 2009, mm-hmm. Really a pivotal point for many of us that I think felt that perhaps we've been sitting on the sidelines for too long, and certainly
Right.
That was myself. Yeah, I could argue I've been involved for many years, but it was really about that time which prompted me to run for precinct delegate in 2010. Mm-hmm. And really it was 2009, 2010, I started becoming heavily engaged in not only the North Oakland Republican group that I've been affiliated with, but also the GOGOP group, which quickly became my home politically. And it was really serving as a precinct delegate, mm-hmm. helping others get elected, and really just an organic discussion with friends in preceding the 2014 election year that that prompted me to consider running. It was an open seat, and so I figured it was I had as good a chance as anybody to win that election. So it was really that experience as a precinct delegate, my activism within the GOGOP club that thrust me to consider running for office.
Well, you've certainly been a great supporter of GOGOP, and we're thrilled when you come to visit us. We meet the second Tuesday of every month at Canterbury Village. We'd encourage people to join us from 7 till 9 o'clock. So please check us out again at gogop.club. Being a precinct delegate, that's really the true grassroots of politics. That's literally being your neighborhood rep, walking around, knocking doors, putting hang tags on, teaching people about maybe local races that they don't know anything about. There's no commercials about your local judge. Or maybe there are, but not many.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
And did you sort of see that retail politicking as a way that sort of you took it with you when you went to the state level? It's still door knocking, it's still shoe leather, it's still, the basics.
100%. And one of the things that I pride myself on is being accessible and available. Frankly, I argue that these state elective offices, being House, Senate, or otherwise, are really blue-collar jobs in the way that one should approach them. I drive 84 miles to Lansing. I drive 84 miles back every night.
Right.
That often means 12, 16-hour days. I start out early, I end late, and
right.
I do so because I think it's important for your elected officials to have an accurate and proper pulse on what's important. And the only way to do that is to spend more time back home.
And that's the commonality that we found talking to people on this show, that even though they're elected officials and are going to be called away to Washington or to Lansing, don't neglect that your neighborhood or your town or whatever else. Those people want to see you out having a cup of coffee, walking into a business, better understanding what they do. Along those lines, you had office hours recently, which you do have every month, I believe, or twice a month?
I do. I have one set of office hours in the Clarkston Independence area. Had those this morning, and then this coming Friday I'll have them in Waterford Township. So I do that 90 minutes. Today it went about 2 hours. It really depends, and so I really strive to make myself available through those office hours.
And you had some visitors today also.
Yeah, I did. I, as a former educator, a former civics and history teacher, I still maintain strong relationships with a lot of my former colleagues. And, keeping a pulse on what they're doing, going in every semester and visiting and talking about who I am and what I am as a state representative. But many of my former colleagues have initiated a program in the school district called Project Citizen.
Okay.
And what students are required to do is to research and engage in an issue, local, state, or federal, that they find compelling or they find of interest. And so I had, I think, about 8 students visit me at my office hours this morning over at Leo's Coney.
Okay.
And they wanted to talk about school security.
I can imagine that's a very popular topic right now, even if a difficult one to talk about. What was we see that there's a lot of this going on around the country.
Right.
Kids are walking out of schools, and I think coming from a more conservative Republican point of view, that we're saying, well, guns are certainly involved in what's going on, but isn't the bigger problem why is a child arriving at school with an attitude that they want to hurt anybody with anything?
Correct.
Did the kids who show up at your event seem more like people you would see on television, or did they have sort of their own distinct opinions about it?
Yeah, I would say the latter. I was really pleased with the discussion that transpired. Frankly, guns weren't even on part of the discussion, weren't part of any of their questioning, frankly. And so we had a real great discussion, and we were asking for my input as to what I thought the state's role is. And I said, someone that's been proud to be deferential to local governance,
Right.
be at the township level, be at the school board level, that I think first and foremost these discussions need to happen here at home.
Right.
And to talk, bring community members, board members, teachers, administrators into the room and include students and talk about what does safety and security look like here, in this example, Orion Township.
Right.
And so they found that very compelling, and I said one of the big challenges, of course, is funding. So I think the state could play an important role in helping to provide supplemental funding to help, to help deliver and to help incorporate whatever those priorities look like at the local level.
What are we would say common sense priorities maybe, and not turning it into an armed camp or a fortress, but still a school where kids are going to be educated, and again, maybe addressing root causes of how these things happen. If someone were to drive a car through the front of a school, it would be just as tragic, but we wouldn't say, okay, there's no cars allowed. Something along those lines. It's very interesting, and I'm glad to hear that those young people have those diverse opinions on it, and they also thought to reach out to you. That is really what it's all about. So you can really interact one-on-one. And again, it's sort of like what we're doing here. We're trying to connect more with you and with other politicians so people can better understand, you and your policies and just everything you're doing for the community, and also how they can interact with you. That I think a lot of times politicians are seen as in an ivory tower no matter what position they're in, but really they're out there for you, and or you're out there for them rather, and you're much more accessible, I think, than a lot of people would expect, which is terrific, and we hope you continue to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Right now we're wrapping up the first segment of On the Right Side. We have Representative Jim Tedder with us from the 43rd District, and we're going to have him back after a short break. Thank you very much.
Holy Spokes Bicycle Works in Lake Orion invites you to take part in the 2018 Ride of Silence. Join cyclists worldwide as they honor those who have been injured or killed while cycling on public roadways. This free event will offer 3 routes in Lake Orion. A 4.4-mile route will take participants on a path through neighborhoods around Voorhees Lake. A 9.1-mile route will utilize gravel trails and safety paths, and a 14.7-mile route will take riders into downtown Lake Orion, utilizing safety paths and main roads. All 3 routes will begin and end at Woodside Bible Church on Joslin Road near Greenshield. To get involved, visit holyspokes.org or call 586-894-8895. You can also visit rideofsilence.org for more information.
Hi, welcome back to On the Right Side. I'm Al Hassinger, Activities VP for the Greater Oakland Republican Club. You can check us out on gogop.club. We're joined by Jim Tedder, the state rep from the 43rd District. Thank you again for joining us, Jim.
Thanks, Al. Glad to be back.
We had talked about a little bit of the local aspect of your position right now, and we just wanted to touch on things going on in Lansing. You're involved with a number of committees in Lansing right now, actually chairing the tax committee.
Correct.
Which might be a hot topic these days, or maybe all days. Also co-chair of health, and then also on communication and technology and energy. As chair of the tax committee, does that really take up most of your time being the chair of the committee, or are they all sort of equally divided?
It does. I would say health is a close second for me because I think it's discussions with respect to health policy in this state are very profound, have a heavy weight on our budget, and certainly on the lives of people. But there's no question that as chair of tax, I'm not only responsible for my personal passions within that realm, but I need to listen and give deference to colleagues and hear them out on the priorities that are important to them. So it consumes a majority of my time, although I've got my hands in a myriad of different areas when it comes to policy.
Well, as Republicans, we're trying to give you less to do in taxes, so we'll see if we can work with you on that. On the health side, we hear about opioids, we hear about a lot of problems. What's the main thing that state addresses you address as the co-chair of the health committee?
Yeah, I would say that we've seen a lot of bills with respect to opioid addiction, and really with respect to diversion, because that seems to be the singular and probably most prevalent problem. Diversion meaning that grandma has some pills, or from hip surgery, grandson or granddaughter goes over, knows where those pills are, takes a couple here, a couple there, and suddenly discover an addiction to opioids. That's how it happens, certainly. So the diversion problem is something we've really tried to tackle, and by limiting in a reasonable way how and to what extent opioids are dispensed by doctors, and commensurately delivered at the pharmacy counter.
Yeah.
Those are some of the broad areas that that we're focusing on, without also acknowledging that there are a great many people with chronic conditions that rely upon an adequate dosage to maintain daily living.
Right. If they have true chronic pain or something that's debilitating, right, limiting their access to their pain medication is only going to limit their access to their pain medication. It's one thing to say that someone should only get 30-day supply or whatever else, but if you have rheumatoid arthritis or something like that that's simply not going to go away, limiting your access to painkillers is probably not the best bet. So obviously there's some happy medium out there,
right?
And I'm glad to hear you're addressing it. I would expect nothing less from the state,
right?
And just keep us apprised on this. We always have topical issues at the Greater Oakland Republican Club. This will certainly come up, so please join us at the next club meeting, and we'll certainly go over it. In regards to communications and tech and energy, is there any fine points you want to touch on either of those committees?
Yeah, with respect to communication and technology, the issue of drone regulations has become a real big issue, and it's funny when I do go into putting on my educator hat for a minute. When I go in and talk to schools, I ask students to raise, how many of you own a drone? And
right.
80% of them raise their hand. Many received one for Christmas.
Right.
And but they don't realize that ownership of a drone also imposes an enormous burden, and that burden is that we need to be careful that we're not only invading regulated airspace by the Federal Aviation Administration, but that we're not violating privacy laws and so on, because we're not talking about the nice little remote control airplanes that you and I perhaps
right, like an RC plane they used to call it
as a kid. These have cameras on them. They're fast. They're efficient. They can go several hundred feet in the air.
Yeah.
And so that's been a pretty hot topic right now. There's another one as well that not related to drones, but with respect to rights of way. That's largely been driven by some of the rural broadband providers. And there's been a tug of war, if you will, between local governments, between the county road commissions, and these telecom providers who are in effect asking for some deference in those rights of ways. And here in Oakland County, I would argue we are much more sophisticated in what lies in those roadways by virtue of our population and such. And so there was, in my view, potential unintended consequences that if some of this legislation had played out and become law, that would have been extremely detrimental and costly to the residents of Oakland County, that we would be bearing the costs of them laying, at least hypothetically, laying new cable as they sought to expand broadband. So it's been more of a rural issue, but again, sometimes when you create legislation, it creates unintended consequences for more populated and, I would argue, sophisticated areas like Oakland County.
That's a perfect segue, because when you think about the state of Michigan, it could be from the UP to Wayne County to Oakland County, where we're sitting right now. The needs of all of those places have some commonality, but are slightly different.
Right.
Are there some votes that you took in Lansing that addressed your constituents that may have gotten pushback either from other constituents in your district or didn't quite fit with the rest of the state?
Yeah, there's the one on, I forget the exact bill number, Senate Bill 437, 438, or perhaps both, were votes that I voted no on in committee because I knew it was detrimental to the taxpayers of Oakland County.
Okay.
And likewise, there are bills that I voted on that I've received criticism for because I've listened to my locals.
Right.
I give great deference to my local supervisors. Chris Barnett here in Orion, a friend and someone I value his perspective. Pat Kittle in Independence in Township.
Sure.
Matt Gibb, former Orion supervisor, and someone that's, I think, very well versed on economic development, and
Sure.
probably one of the best in the state.
Sure, he
And
worked with the county for years.
So there have been votes related to lending them my ear. They've come and testified in Lansing. And so, sometimes there have been times when I voted my constituency, or voted in deference to local leadership over maybe a philosophical belief.
Right.
And, that maybe tarnishes what would otherwise be a pure conservative record.
Right. Well, I think even if you were to represent, 99% of the people in your district, there's still going to be someone who's going to be
Absolutely.
dissatisfied, and they're going to be the one on the phone or coming to your, office days or something, office hours,
Yeah.
something like that. Talk about the roads, if you would, a little bit. It seems to be, it's a never-ending subject, and I think as conservatives, we want to make hard choices, but the choices are hard. We have a lot of bills to pay, yet I drive up and down some roads, and calling them paved would be generous. Right. Some of it's a county level, some of it's towns, villages. 75 would be a federal level. Where's the road to the better future, for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah. Well, certainly, I've been fighting since going to Lansing to pave a road to the better future, literally, and figuratively. And really, it requires me to back up just a moment and explain how roads are funded. We've got what's called Public Act 51, which is, decades old policy that in effect is a formula for how every dollar is dispensed here in the state. So approximately 89 cents of every dollar does make it to roads. You've got your state trunk line fund, you've got your county road fund, and you have your city and village fund. That's at what we call the bottom of the formula, your bottom three buckets. And that's where you and I, the ones that drive, we don't rely on public transportation or rail per se.
Right.
That's what we care about the most. There's other funding that supports public transit, airports, rail crossings, and things of that nature. Now, the other detriment to Public Act 51 lies in the fact that because this act goes back, 6 or 7 decades,
right,
it didn't acknowledge for the growth that has since ensued. And when I speak of, the formula awards money based upon linear miles rather than accounting for wider roads.
Right. A
So
road
here-
60 years ago or 70 years ago is very different
Right.
than a road today.
Yeah, and so I don't, that was either short-sighted or political.
Right.
But either way, what we have now, we have more people within the legislature benefiting from the formula than we have those of us here in the southeast region that find it to our detriment.
Right.
So we're stuck with this formula, which leaves Oakland County as a donor county. And so when we're talking about paving a road to the future, I believe that we need to have more conversations here at the county level and perhaps even the township level.
Right, and local governance is the key. It seems to be the theme to everything. Who better understands our roads than if we're going to and from work or to our homes or whatever else? But anything, I think, that would be still utilized as a regulation or a guideline being 70 years old, I think might sort of be out of touch, except the Constitution.
Thank you.
Again, we're speaking with Jim Tedder, State Rep from the 43rd District here in Michigan. This is On the Right Side. This is our monthly show. We're going to have topics going forward that are going to interest you, so please tune in. And also, take a look at gogop.club, our website, and of course, join us once a month at Canterbury Village for the GOGOP meeting, 7 till 9 o'clock, the second Tuesday of every month. And Jim, thank you again for joining us. It's been absolutely fantastic getting to know more about you and what you're doing for the state. You want to just give us a little wrap and just say maybe the direction for the future of the state. What can we do and what can we expect?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different directions I could point us in that regard, but I really think it remains critical for us to be good stewards of your tax dollars and to formulate a broad-based tax policy that benefits the hardworking taxpayers and retirees of Michigan. We've had some missed opportunities with failed reforms relating to the broken promise on the income tax. I think that that's something that still needs to be addressed. We've got 1 in 4 people that receive Medicaid or some form of social welfare. And I really think it's important that we scrutinize those benevolent programs to streamline them, to make sure that those that do benefit are the ones that truly need it, and to get more people back onto the work roll. So those are some things, in short, I believe that we can work on that achieve real savings for the taxpayers of Michigan and more money for roads.
Terrific. I don't know what to add to that. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, Al.